Welcome back to IMD's Tech for Good series. The majority of those viewing this video are familiar with Jack Ma, the force behind the creation of Alibaba. He founded Alibaba with a precise mission in mind: to democratize global trade and establish a level playing field for small businesses, empowering them to compete effectively. A prime illustration of this is rural Taobao, which was instrumental in bridging the urban-rural divide in China. This equipped rural businesses with the means to access wider markets, extending their reach beyond local boundaries. Further exemplifying his commitment to fostering economic inclusivity, Ma championed Alipay, providing microloans and insurance to small businesses, among other services. The companies you are meeting in this IMD Tech for Good video series, including today's guest, echo Jack Ma's desire to utilize technological innovation for the collective good. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Marc Gitzinger, founder and CEO of BioVersys. I and a group of IMD EMBAs had the privilege of working with Marc and traveling together with him to Silicon Valley back in 2012. Welcome back to IMD, Marc. It's good to see you here. And to get us started, could we hear your elevator pitch?
Yes, first of all, thanks, Jim, for having me back here. It's really a pleasure. So at BioVersys, as you probably still remember, we really tackle the topic of new medicines for a very important and urgent health threat in the world, and that is antibiotic drug resistance. So meaning bacterial infections that are resistant to the current antibiotics that we have. So we use technology, as you exemplified, and develop new medicines for severe life-threatening bacterial infections.
So if we get straight into the business, financially, how does BioVersys work? I mean, what are the drivers of your business?
Well, biotech is a funny industry. Mm-hmm. We are extremely good at burning cash. So basically, what we are doing is we really depend and rely on investors, which are mainly family offices, classical venture capitals, institutional investors, and partially also in our line of business, governmental grants, so really truly non-dilutive funding. And we deploy that money to do research and then clinical development, so really test our medicines to ideally come to market. And our company in the meantime is already with 2 programs in clinical phase 2. So quite close to a true value inflection point and towards the end of getting these drugs towards patients.
So just as an additional question, will you take these products to market yourself, or how will patients like me eventually get you access to your products?
Well, this is currently an interesting point because it's really the time where this is slowly deciding. Of course, we aim at developing these drugs towards patients. And that means we might do it all the way ourselves. Or there is an M&A transaction, a licensing, with a larger pharmaceutical company that steps in and kind of buys us out or licenses the drug to take it further.
Okay, classic model.
Very classic, yes.
So how does being a tech for good company help you with investors, with eventually customers? Does it make a difference labeling yourself a tech for good company?
That's an interesting question, and I had to think about that one because it probably, to your surprise, isn't helping as much in our line of business as you'd think. Mm-hmm. So no investor is against being a tech for good, right? Mm-hmm. But especially in biotech, I have to say, when thinking about this, that the monetary return is still the strongest driver. And I find this is a little bit sad because the so-called impact investors today focus a lot on green tech, on fair trade, etc., but not so much yet on equitable health. And I think this is a big mistake. Because if you think about it, after food, health is the next most important thing for any country, for any human being, to actually be productive, to build a sustainable economy, mm-hmm. and well-being, actually. So I think that impact investors, and that's my shout out here, should focus a lot more on equitable health. And the topic of antibiotics is really top priority there, because this is not only diseases of the developed world, but also of the developing world. And it's very impactful down there. And we have to actually do more.
I love that term, equitable health. I don't think I'd heard that before, but I can see it fitting perfectly with the domain you're working in. Do people understand what that means? And is it real?
I think what we mean with it is that antibiotics, if you think about it, are a drug class that really everyone in the world needs access to. And that means from the lowest income countries to the highest income countries. At the same time, while drug prices need to be reasonable, you need to control how much it's used. There shouldn't be misuse. Very, very important for antibiotics. And that's really a topic where we talk about equitable health. People need access to good quality drugs at reasonable prices throughout the world with good control and sustainable use.
And what about impact investors? Do they understand that? I mean, we hear a lot about ESG now, but do impact investors understand that you are the kind of company that can have an impact?
Yeah, I guess, again, I don't think that in impact investing, the healthcare part of it is big enough yet, and there's not enough focus on it. And I think, there's still in our line of business in biotech, the main focus is on financial returns and purely on financial returns, while even the industry now has set up a fund called the AMR Action Fund, a $1 billion fund that focuses only on new antibiotics. And they measure, of course, a financial return on invest. They need that, that's clear. But they also measure the impact. We need new antibiotics. But most other investment funds that even have impact in their name really ignore that fact totally, because the business model is still challenging. Because you need, as I said before, relatively low prices. So new antibiotics are probably not your multi-billion-dollar drugs. They're your hundreds of million-dollar drugs. Still sustainable, still a good return, but not as big as. And that is where I think there's still a lot of education to be done. And I'd be very happy if my comments help a few people to think about it.
What was your motivation for founding BioVersys? I mean, what made you decide you're going to put a big chunk of your life into getting this company off the ground and getting these products eventually to market?
Well, initially, during my PhD thesis, we came across a technology that delivered a molecule that could have had some impact on tuberculosis patients. And that was a motivation to, try and see how far we can get. Surprisingly, even to ourselves, I guess, we made it now that this product is in clinical phase 2 in development. So we are treating patients as we speak, and it looks quite okay, to say the least. And we have expanded the company since to a second program, also in clinical phase 2 for hospital-acquired infections. We have added new technologies. We have continued to build on the original platform. So we have a really sustainable pipeline in the meantime. And I think we're getting closer to the dream becoming true.
Well, let me use that as my next question. How do you define success?
Yeah, I think in our line of business, even though it might sound tacky, but truly the biggest success is if you see in the end that you make a difference on life-threatening diseases, right? And you help patients. And now as 2 programs, as I say, we're treating patients and we see the impact, and it's really nice. And we obviously want to, take that further all the way so that everyone can have access to it. That's probably the biggest success. Something else that really grew on me, more than I would have thought, is the financial side of things, which I define as returning some of the, or returning not only the money, but also real returns to our investors. Because these people have believed in us for many, many years, supported us, and made all of this possible. So I think it's also a big and important success factor to return or give a financial return. Because without these finances, any innovation can't actually be developed. I think it's a very important factor.
I think that's one of the things I've said in a previous video is that when somebody's trying to change the world, it requires resources. And typically that means venture capital. Yes. And venture capitalists need a return. There's no question about that. When you look at all the things that you've been through, what are some of the major challenges you've had to face and how have you overcome them?
Well, I would think that there's 3 major challenges for most of the startups. One is obviously resources in terms of finance. The second one is human capital, building teams. And the third one are the technical challenges. All 3 of them will come for anyone, and you have to overcome them. Persistence is very important. I think never losing curiosity and the ability to listen and learn. That's very important. And then, continuing to believe in the dream, because that keeps on, motivating you and pushing you to overcome the hurdles, because there will be hurdles.
I love that. I think this is where we'll close it. Thank you very much for coming in, Marc. This was exactly what I was hoping for. And to our audience, when you're talking to entrepreneurs or you're looking at something amazing, like the technology that Marc just talked to us about, think about how they keep alive that dream through all the challenges, all the things that they've got to handle. Keeping alive the dream. That's something that I think any Tech for Good entrepreneur can hold on to. Thank you very much for watching.